Good afternoon. My name is Fernando Padilla, and I'm here at Vanness Pen Shop, Arkansas's pen shop and source for pen information for more years than I care to count. They've been around for a very long time. I'm here today to help show you how to fix a Wahl Repair Sapphire. Now, what's interesting about this particular pen is the color. It tends to be a later color for the Doric line. They had a very limited color range when they were first introduced around 1931. If you look at the timeline in Glenn Bowen's book, post 1935, the oversized Dorics disappeared. You can come across piston-filled pens like this one that are large and have substantial nibs, but they're not truly oversized. There's a bit of it. They're just a little bit smaller. Now, the advantage of the Wahl Repair Sapphire here is the color. They're absolutely stunning. They're gorgeous. The trim is not chrome. It is white gold filled. Wahl did not skimp when it came to material, and it's evident in every single bit of this pen. They really made a high quality pen. Things to look for when you're buying one of these: crazing, cracking, and brassing, in that order. Look for areas where the plastic's deteriorating. If they're deteriorating, that can be a real issue, because once it starts, it doesn't stop. The pen just slowly goes away. It can be a real problem. So if you're buying one of these, be very careful and take a light to it. Be very careful in looking at the plastics. Look for cracks. Look for problem areas. Now, one of the advantages this pen has, 1931 to 1935, I believe it was, you had the decorative gilded cap band, but it did not extend all the way to the end of the cap lip. So they split like crazy. That's where they all break. Those pens without a crack, you're talking about finding a really rare pen if it doesn't have a crack. Because people tend to post these pens. Posting is a bad idea on any vintage pen. I recommend against it completely, because you're either going to scratch the cap or scratch the barrel. It's just easier to take the cap off your pen, set it to one side, put it in your shirt pocket, do your writing, and put it back on. If you must post a pen, be aware that you do run the risk of cracking it. Now, the thing I like most about the Eversharp line of pens is high quality, great nibs. They paid a lot of attention. What's neat about this pen, and we'll do this in the macro portion of the video, is this pen has what's known as a slider on the top of the nib, emblazoned Eversharp. It slides forward and back. Pushed all the way out, you've got a manifold nib. Ratcheted all the way back, you've got flex. You've got the best of all worlds with shading all the way in between. It's really, really, when you find one of these nibs, they go for big money because they are awesome. Now, the safety ink shutoff valve, if you look, there's a little metal tang that's parallel to the bottom of the feed that protrudes above the section. And when you cap the pen, this little metal tab gets pushed down and theoretically would cut off the ink flow, except it never worked. It's just a spring-loaded, well, for lack of a better way to put it, it's a gimmick. And if you look at the Marshall Oldfield book, I don't like to disassemble these because they're a real pain. If you've got the Marshall Oldfield book, he shows one completely disassembled, the entire pen disassembled along with the safety ink shutoff valve. And sometimes you'll run across these where the spring that operates the mechanism has rusted out. It's not a big deal to replace those. I've done it. You just have to find the right diameter spring and clip it in. It's not hard. It's a fiddly little thing to mess with. Now, I always start my repair process by going to, and you can see it's falling apart, Frank Dubiel's The Book. This to me is my Bible when it comes to repair. I reread this book constantly, hence the flyaway back cover. Frank covered the Wahl piston repair in his book on page 54, and basically said, look, I'm going to show you how to do it for Schaefer. It's the same principle for Wahl. You just do the same thing for a Schaefer that you would, you do the same thing for a Wahl that you would with a Schaefer. The mechanism itself is essentially an adaptation of the Inoto filling mechanism, which is far older and a lot more persnickety and a whole lot more fun if you're into that. But ultimately, what you're looking for when you get done with the pen, this is a Schaefer barrel, and it has a replaced piston mechanism. I use this in my pen repair workshop that I teach at the Arkansas Pen Show every year. Essentially, this is a piston filler, and you know it works when you push it down and you get this noise. That little bitty, almost cheek thumb thing is what you're looking to hear when you're done. When you push down the rod, a vacuum is created between the packing unit and the front washer. Now, I've got a removed piston with washer and nut to show you exactly what we're dealing with. You've got a hard nut in the front, a flexible washer in between, and a hard backing washer. As that goes down, the walls of the flexible washer grab the inside of the barrel, and an air vacuum is created behind that. And when it hits the front, that front nut is going to hit a little rod on the wall. It's going to kick it off to one side, thereby releasing the vacuum all at once, causing the ink to rush up. It's really a neat and ingenious filling mechanism. Most pen companies utilize some variant of the Anoto mechanism in the course of their lifetime, with few exceptions. Now, the first thing to do when fixing one of these pens is disassembly. First thing you got to do is withdraw the piston rod to the back. Why? Because when you go to unscrew the section, you don't want it fighting with the front of this and breaking it. Okay, so the first thing you do is unscrew the back. I always then go ahead and unscrew the back end, which should unscrew easily. You have a cross-fitting nut which you can use to tighten to hold that blind cap on, because you don't want to lose it. You'll unscrew the small hex-shaped nut that is on the back that is threaded on, and just like with Schaefer's of the Depression era, you're dealing with a hard rubber covered iron rod. These are not ideal. Okay, after a while the hard rubber will deteriorate, they crack, and the rod rusts through. Not anything to worry about, because you can get replacement piston rods manufactured for Schaefer, because as Father Koch observed in his repair material, there were like 8 different lengths of Schaefer piston rod, and they were fairly standardized. And with Wahl pens crystallizing, it's not impossible to find a donor mechanism. It just got to keep an eye on the plastic. Okay, now that I've removed the business end on the back, then I will proceed to unscrew the front. Unscrewing the front, sometimes you do it with heat, sometimes you do it with just your hands. I tend to soak the front of piston filling pens to about just above the threads for about a week in a soapy water solution, and that causes whatever thread sealant was placed on the pen to hopefully break down. Now, some of these were put back together with shellac. Some of them were put back together with Schaefer thread sealant, which is actually currently available, but you have to use heat to reactivate it to make it possible to unscrew the front. I prefer the soaking method on these. It's never failed me. You just soak it for about a week and then unscrew. Now, this one's been pre-disassembled to make so that we're not here for a long time. Now, what you do is you will unscrew the section feed nib. Okay? Now, the section feed nib, if you look at the back of the section, you're going to see what I was talking about. There's a section of threads that looks like it's broken out. It is not. It is got a piece of black hard rubber tubing or black hard rubber rod between 2 parallel holes there, and what happens is when the front of the piston filling mechanism engages with that, it kicks that off to one side, thereby releasing the vacuum all at once. Now, I'm going to show you what we're dealing with here in terms of a piston rod. Even the piston rod on the Wahl is more elegant than the Schaefer. I mean, yes, that's cool. That's neat. They put a lot of work into the front nut, making it pretty and putting unnecessary nut attachments to it so that you could unscrew it. It's got the hard backing washer on it. And what you'll do is you'll simply unscrew the front end. Now, sometimes these are rusted on. You can use an ultrasonic cleaner, but a lot of people don't have that. Hopefully, if you've soaked it for a week, that will just unscrew. If not, then you can resort to heat to gently cause expansion and contraction between the iron and the rubber to allow it to be unscrewed easily. Once you have this unscrewed, it's all about this, that little persnickety rubber gasket. I make my own. I use a wooden block, my knockout block, and 2 piston filling gasket cutters that I made for Schaefer's. One made out of a 5/16 inch tube, another made out of 11/32, and I use a length of readily available bicycle tire, which I got at my local bike shop for free about 10 years ago. And as you can see, I cut my own, and then I use what's left because it gets really grippy with the holes in it, so I don't ever throw it away. I just keep cutting gaskets out and putting them aside for a later date. Now what you'll do to cut your gasket is you'll cut the appropriate size. I want a small gasket for a small wall. I'll take the sheet of bike tire. I will take the tool, which I have sharpened using a whetstone. I will cut a gasket, and then push it out, and away we go. Then I eyeball the center and just literally poke a hole in it. Now you can get commercially available neoprene washers that are made, and they're very nice, but they're very flexible. And I think the center hole, at least in my applications, is milled just a little bit big for me. I don't want that much air going out of the center of the nut, so I just poke a hole and know that when you get that flexible gasket on here and you screw that nut home, it's going to dome out, it's going to make it a little bit bigger, it's going to make it a little bit grabbier, and you're going to get a little bit better compression, which is what I like. Now, excuse the removal of glasses, but I got to see what I'm doing here. Once you get your hole poked with your tool, again, just eyeballing it, what you'll do is you'll walk that washer on, and by that I mean you'll essentially, my method is to put it on put the washer on the rod and spin it until it gets on, and then the metal rod comes through, pokes through, then I'll walk it back with my fingernail to get it back. Once it's back all the way to the back, then what I'll do is take my front washer, which I have not mislaid, and at that point see about getting that preferred domed up, pushed to the front look that is so crucial to this repair, because you really do want it to dome forward a little bit. Now, when dealing with a piston filler, you want a little bit of lubricant while that is going up and down, preferably on the back side of the washer. So what I do is I take the back end of the washer and I'll take it on the edge of the silicone grease that I get from Sam and Frank Fiorella at Pandemonium, where I get most of my pen repair supplies. And from there, once it's lubed, drop it into the barrel. Now, a word about cleaning barrels. When dealing with a Wahl barrel, you're dealing with a semi-transparent barrel, okay? I clean mine out with Windex. I just literally take my finger, put one end over it, and I will squirt Windex in it, and then I'll take a Q-tip and work out any dried ink that is left in the barrel. This one is exceptionally clear. Another word about inks. If you're going to have a clear barreled vintage fountain pen and you're going to use inks, you don't want to fill it with Noodler's Bulletproof Black. Noodler's inks are fine. Many pen companies are fine. I prefer the most inactive, inert inks that aren't going to stain. And one of the ways that I test inks to make sure they're not going to stain my pen is those cheap Solo plastic cups. And what I'll do is I'll take a small ink sample and drop it in a disposable cup. And if it doesn't come off the inside of a brand new plastic cup with just a little bit of rinsing and some soap, it ain't going in my pen. So I tend to use Waterman Blue Black in vintage pens, especially when you want to preserve the clarity here. Next step in the repair is to drop the piston rod into the back of the barrel. Now, on the back end, dealing with piston units, with the packing unit, there's several methods to fix these. The Marshall Oldfield book, which I love, but goes into just incredible details, describes this ultrasonic method of rejuvenation of the packing unit. I've never done it, never tried it, can't vouch for it. I tend to drill my packing units with a 1/4-inch drill bit and use the David Nishimura 2-seal repair system, which consists of a big round rubber washer and a white front plastic packing unit. And what you do when you're redoing a packing unit, I haven't done Wahl before, I've just done Schaefer, but essentially you take your 1/4-inch drill bit, drill out the old packing unit, take this, coat it generously with silicone grease, drop it down to the back of the barrel. You'll take your white packing unit, rest it on the back end of the drill you used to drill out the old packing unit, and put some model glue to make sure that this glues it down and holds it tight. That's really not the subject of this repair, because I think our packing unit is good on this. And if you're at all interested in watching it, I've done a video on that separately here at Vanness. Now, what you'll do is you'll drop this down in the barrel. Finding the hole in the butt end can be a challenge, and to that end, Father Koch, God rest his soul, made some really cool tools to be able to locate that quickly. I've never had any trouble doing it by hand. And actually, since this is a small Doric plunger, if we were using Father Koch's parts, that part would be numbered X15. So for those of you who still have his parts, that's what you'd use to fix this pen. Essentially, you drive that back and put on your nut first. And once that's on, then you'll put on your back plunger decorative knob, and then we're going to look for that sound. Oh yeah, we got it. That's the stuff. Okay. All right. And then we go to screw this back in. Now there's two ways to make sure this is ink tight. You can use the Schaefer thread sealant, which is awesome, but it has to be heated to be put on. You can use shellac, but you're not getting back into it very easily if you do that. Or you can do what I do, which is to use, I know, you're going to hate me for this, I use a little bit of beeswax. And I do that because it's fairly inert, it doesn't cause any damage. Whatever you do, do not use chapstick, okay? It's the worst idea ever. I copped to it, I did it, I paid the price. Don't let my tears be yours. Don't use chapstick, okay? It's a bad idea. Literally the section just exploded on me. Okay, then you'll screw your section home, and with that, you should be able to fill this right up. Yep, and that concludes the business end of fixing this. Now, a word about this, the age of this pen. As I understand it from reading Glenn Bowen, and I love Glenn Bowen, he's a great guy, but he did us a real service, I think, when he laid out the chronology of the Doric, because it can be hard to understand. But as I understand it, the safety ink shutoff was introduced in '37, discontinued in '38 because of the FTC. Basically, they were advertising that something doesn't work. Something that didn't work, and the FTC wasn't having it. The Eversharp company, because no one who worked there ever called it Wahl, was an innovative, beautiful company. And Omos, if you're listening, this is the pen people want. And with that, that concludes my repair of this Wahl.